Welcome to Chainsaws and Beyond. We're going to do a series of videos to help students studying for chainsaw qualifications in the UK. This will be helpful to them, but it may be helpful to the wider community. We're going to spend this time going through the chainsaw maintenance requirements to start with, and then we'll just progress further down the line. Hope you enjoy the video. Safety features on our Stihl. So throttle, safety throttle, so I have my throttle underneath and the interlock on the top. It takes two distinct movements to activate the throttle. I can check it by just trying to push the throttle against the interlock. The saw's in this plane, my hand will go on, I'll push the interlock down and I can activate the throttle with my finger. The saw's on its side, I push the interlock down with the knuckles of my hand and activate the throttle with my thumb. Clearly marked on and off switch, in our case in English, it tells you what direction it goes. And with a Stihl, it's accessible with the thumb of the left hand and it goes up to stop the machine. On the machine we have a sticker, our safety decals, and stickers telling us caution, wear PPE and read the manual. Going around the machine, I have my front hand guard, my left hand guard, my front hand guard, and it incorporates chain brake mechanism, exhaust pipe directs fumes away from the operator, and my chain rotates round in this direction. The exhaust pipe will direct the fumes at the chain, and as the chain goes around it will create a draft and take the fumes away from the operator. Scabbard bar guard, this is when the machine is in storage or transit, so the sharp bits underneath don't get damaged or damage something else. Bar, chain and sprocket, one hair and one hair, so bar, chain and sprockets combination, and then the chain will have some safety features inherently built into it to make it a smoother cutting and prevent kickback. Chain rotates around this way, so if the chain snaps or derails, rather than disappearing through the woods, it gets caught on a thing here which is called the chain catcher. It should be there and undamaged. Because the energy was going forward, the chain snaps or derails, is now coming backwards once it's caught around the chain catcher. This part of the saw here, which again should be inspected to make sure it's not damaged, is the rear hand guard. It's going to protect my hand if the chain would snap or derail. In between the cutting components and the engine, the bits I hold and the bits that interact with my body, I have vibration mounts, so the handlebars are isolated from vibration from the cutting components in the engine. Stihl bar and chain removal. So first I'm going to loosen the two side nuts, here and here. So I take my appropriate tool, lefty loosey. I'm just going to turn those just so they're sort of finger loose. Next I'm going to take my flat end of my combi tool, I'm going to place it on the chain adjuster, and in this case my chain adjuster is in here. I'll take the tool till it locates. I'm going to turn it anti-clockwise. I'm just going to keep rotating anti-clockwise until the chain hangs off the bar. At this point, if I was going to fit a new chain, I would still continue to wind the chain adjuster back because your new chain will be shorter than the chain that's been used. Now I can continue to remove the side plate. I'm just going to spin the two studs. So this will now withdraw. Now because I'm now going to handle something that's sharp or potentially sharp, I'm going to put some gloves on. Now I'm just going to get hold of my bar. I'm going to take it off the chain adjuster pin that's here. So that was the bit I was winding. and this is the adjuster pin that locates into the bar. I need to bring off that, and then I need to just take the chain from around the back of the sprocket, and then the two component parts will come off. Now I need to find where my air filter, my spark plug, and then my cylinder head are, and they're all underneath this top cover. In this case, I've got 3 studs to unclip, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. I'll just take the flat end of my combi tool, place it into the stud, quarter of a turn anti-clockwise. Now the top cover will come up. I'll just bring it up in this type of motion. Next we're going to remove the recoil starter. And I've got 4 studs to undo. 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. So to start with, I'm just going to loosen each stud. So now I've loosened the studs, I'm just going to remove them, and these studs do come all the way out. So this stud that goes through the front handguard has a little collar on it. So now this is ready to come off. I just need to relieve the front handguard where that stud that had the collar on goes. I'm just going to move that to the side, and then this bit will come out like this. So now we're going to go through removing or replacing or changing the sprocket, and then behind here we have our clutch drum and our needle bearings. So first job is, because I need to remove the clutch drum on my Stihl, I need to make sure my chain brake is in the rear position or the open position. So thumb around the handle, fingers over the chain brake mechanism. On this side, I'm just going to click it back. Now this is free spinning. So on this end here, I have a E-clip. I'm just going to take my small screwdriver. I'm just going to turn so my E-clip unclips. I'm going to take a slightly larger screwdriver. So I'm just going to keep my finger around so it doesn't disappear around the room. Just walk it off. So that's my E-clip. Then there's a retaining washer. So this retaining washer is shaped so that the E-clip fits inside it. So that if we had a piece of stick or something come up through the bottom of the saw, it couldn't push the E-clip off. Then there's my sprocket. And my clutch drum will come off. And then very carefully remove my needle bearings. So just to go a little bit further or go beyond, so next we're going to just find our chain brake mechanism, which is behind here. So we need to remove this metal plate, and then we're going to remove this black cover, and that will free up where our chain brake. We can see our chain brake mechanism or the chain brake band. We can see while this is off, but we want to clean it better or inspect it better, or even replace it if necessary. We still need to remove some more component parts. So I've got this cover, this black cover. So that's a very small little screw. Now this metal plate will come off. So now to remove this in this case black plastic cover around our clutch. We've got 1, 2, 3 screws. Yeah, they're all the same size. Now this black cover will come off. Now that's revealed our chain brake trip mechanism, our chain brake band and our clutch drum. So there'll be, if there's debris and stuff in here, that will interfere with our trip mechanism of our chain brake. So our chain brake band, so I want to have a look at that. So I want to remove it or replace it. I'll now need to put the chain brake band in the small position because I've removed the clutch drum. That will allow that to get smaller. So I'm just going to take the handle, front handguard, and move that forward. And then under here, there's another screw I need to remove. Which is the same size as the ones we took out around the black case. And my chain brake band will just lift out. So just taking it out of there, you just bring it forward. So I might need to just walk the handle a little bit. And I'm taking it away from the drum and out. So now we've got our chain brake band. So now this can be cleaned and inspected. So behind my clutch is where my oil pump and my oil pump driver live. If I needed to remove my clutch so I can change the clutch weights, change the clutch springs, or get to my oil pump because I have an oil pump problem, or just to clean everything up. So I need to remove this. There's a hexagon head here, which is 19mm. So I'm going to take an impact gun, 19mm impact socket. Just place it on the clutch drum. Give it a firm whack with the impactor. Loosen my clutch weights. So I need to remember that the larger section of the thread is to the outside when we put it back together. I've got a protection washer. Now behind here, this little arm here is my oil pump driver. That will just lift out. And that little arm is connected to my little oil pump gear, which drives my oil pump. And this section here is the oil pump, which is held in by 1, 2 screws, and again it goes through into the oil tank. So before we move that, we'll probably clean some of this debris out, and we need to make sure our oil tank is empty. So we want to remove the oil pump so we can clean behind it, or we expect we've got a problem with the oil pump. So there's 2 studs, there's one here and one here. So again, I'm just going to spin those loose. And again, they're the same size as the other ones we've taken off in this area. So now my oil pump will just come off. In down here, it's the oil delivery tube. So this is the tube that goes through to the oil tank. So in this case, the pump will come off the tube rather than the tube come out. Just ease that off that tube. There's my oil pump. So now we've removed the oil pump. So this is the delivery tube. So this is where the oil comes out of the oil tank. So on the end of this pipe is the oil strainer. So it all comes through the strainer, through this delivery tube, goes through the oil pump, and then it's delivered through this section here, this port here. That port then runs up to this section up here that feeds our bar and chain. And then now, because we've taken this side cover off, this metal cover off, there is our oil pump breather, or sorry, oil tank breather. So again, if we've got oil problems with on our bar and chain when we do our checks, again, it may be something to do with our oil pump, or our worm gear, or again, it could be our tank breather, could be blocked. So now we've got it stripped apart, we're just going to have a look at how it works. So we know how something works, and we know why we're going to clean the component parts we're going to clean. So on this side of the saw, we've got the flywheel. So I'll take my recoil starter, and in this case, when you pull the handle, there's two small pores inside here. So as I pull the handle, they move out. As they move out, they engage on the inside of this flywheel and turn the flywheel. This flywheel has got two jobs. So one of its jobs is it generates an electrical current. So again, it's got a pair of magnets here, and in this case, because it's a modern saw, it's got a second pair of magnets here. So as the flywheel gets turned, I'm turning those magnets past this black box. This black box is called the coil. And there's a lump of metal sticking out here that runs through the coil, comes out here, and then comes back through the black box, and then comes out again here. So I'm taking a pair of magnets, rotating them past the coil, past this horseshoe of steel, wrapped in copper wire inside the black box. That generates an electrical current that then runs up this HT lead, goes to our spark plug cap, and then goes to our spark plug, ignites our fuel, sends our piston back down. This saw, because it's a modern saw, has got again two pairs of magnets. So one pair is going past the coil and generating the electrical current to run our spark plug, and then as the second pair go past here, that's generating electrical current that runs through here, that runs up these two wires here to here, that runs our computer for controlling our fuel air ratio. Air is drawn in through the side of the recoil starter. So again, this grill here, we need to make sure it's clean and clear of any debris or snow. It's also a guard that stops you putting your fingers or sticks or anything going into the flywheel as the flywheel is rotating. So as air is drawn in through the recoil starter, it's drawn into the side of the machine. The air is rotated around the fan, and the air on the inside of the fan ends up going up this black pipe here, and it comes out into the rear chamber where our air filter sits. So that's pre-cleaned air through centrifugal force is being force fed to our air filter, and then the other air, the slightly dirtier air, is then being directed through this large gap here over the fins of our cylinder head. The way our top cover is we've got a long side and a short side. So how that sits on the machine, the air is then directed via the top cover up over the top of our cylinder head and exits out the short side of the cover. The air filter is housed inside this gasket here. That gasket forms a seal around the inside of this top cover that then separates that chamber off from this one. So on the other side of the machine, this is the crank. It goes all the way through the machine. And in the middle of that, we've got the piston that goes up and down. So as we pull the recoil starter, we turn the crank. The crank moves the piston up and down. As the piston moves up and down, it draws the fuel through the fuel filter, takes the fuel through the fuel filter and delivers it into the base of the crank. As the piston goes down, the skirt on the bottom of the piston pressurizes the crank, so we've got crankcase pressure. The fuel in the crank is used as a lubricant to lubricate the main bearings, the big end bearings, con rod, little end bearings. As the skirt forces the fuel out of the crank, it comes up one of the induction ports and is delivered to the top of the piston. The piston then takes that fuel to the spark plug. The spark plug ignites the fuel, sends the piston down, and the whole cycle starts again. On the other side here, where we had our clutch and our oil pump, so as we increase the throttle, the clutch through centrifugal force, these three weights will expand against the power of the springs, get hold of the clutch drum, make the chain go round. When we come off the throttle, the springs here, in this case these three springs, will contract the clutch weights away from the clutch drum and the chain will stop. So we've had a look at some parts and blown some of the dust off. So now we put some stuff in the parts washer. So all these bits, there's no moving parts as such in them, so they can all go through the parts machine and have a clean. So my oil pump that I took out, again it's a bit grubby and the oil can get a little bit stale, so again I'm going to put it through the parts washer. So my recoil starter, so there are moving parts in the recoil starter. So if I wanted to clean it thoroughly, then I'd need to take out these component parts into it, so that they, again, all the moving parts aren't going to be affected by the parts washer. One of the checks and things I should do with my recoil starter is I should check my cord, and if I need to replace it, I need to replace it. So in this case, I've got this air duct here, and that needs to come out of the way, and there's again some clips, so if I just take my little screwdriver and just poke in here, that will just then allow me to lift this air duct out. And that can now go in the parts washer and be cleaned. So now I've got my recoil starter. So if I want to inspect the cord, I'm going to slacken the cord off. And in this case, I'm just going to withdraw some cord. Now with that air duct out of the way, I've got plenty of room. I'm going to get hold of the cord. I'm going to let the middle bezel unwind without pulling the cord back on. So now if I want to inspect my cord, I can have a look now. I've detensioned it. If the cord had broken, it would be in this detensioned state. So in this case of the Stihl, to look at the top end of the cord, I need to remove this little orange cap. And the cord goes through this plastic tube, and then inside the handle here there's a spring. So that gives you, takes some of the shock load out when you go to start the machine. So I can slide the knot out, so if it's going to break, it may break around the knot, or where the cord comes through the end of the handle. And the other end of the cord is in here. Again, I can have a look at the knot if it breaks, or if the cord had broken, the spring would be in this unwound state. Take a new piece of cord and thread it through, tie the handle on, and then we could then retension it. If I want to go beyond, so if I want to look at my spring or remove my spring, so if I've been using the machine in the rain or the snow, or the spring has broken, I need to replace it, or I need to clean it because it's got rusty. it makes a horrible noise when I pull the handle. I can go a bit beyond. So in this case, we've got this sort of funny shaped RE clip here, and I need to walk that off. So I need to take this long side out and over. So I have my R clip and the two little black paws. Again, now I've got these in my hand, I can have a look at them. One of the things that happens is they wear away at the end. So they get shorter for use, and sometimes they can become too short to fit across inside the flywheel. So again, a good inspection or an opportunity to replace them if need be. There's a little washer that acts like a bush so that the R-clip doesn't wear the plastic rotary part. So now I can withdraw the white section here, and behind that is the spring, and the spring is housed in the housing. So I need to remove the spring because I want to look at it, clean it, replace it. I'm going to take my screwdriver. I'm just going to poke it under the spring, and I'm going to do that away from me. Lay the mechanism down on the table, and I can just release the spring. So now I've separated those component parts, so all the moving parts are out. This can now go in the parts washer and have a thoroughly good clean. I can inspect and clean my spring, and then we'll come back to put it all back. So we're going to reset the spring. So we've cleaned the spring. It's had a bit of a polish, bit of Scotch-Brite, any rust or whatever's gone off it. So it's clean, and we're going to wind it back into the housing. So again, we're checking that it's got both ends. So one end here, the other end is in here, and it looks like it goes in the other way round, but again, this part has to go into the back of this collar. Let the spring feed up from below. What I need to do is keep my thumbs on the spring so it doesn't jump out of the housing. Once I've got a couple of turns in, I can actually walk the spring past itself, and that will hold it in. So now we can just use the spring to hold the spring in. So as I move it round, it's holding the part that's already fitted into the machine. Just take your time, don't rush it. Keep the housing upright, keep the spring feeding in from below. At this point, it becomes very tempting to rush it. Just again, take your time, just work around the outside and it's in. So now we've got the spring wound back into the housing. What we're going to do is we're going to give it some lubrication. Again, if you've got a recoil starter and as you pull the cord it makes a horrible squeaky noise, again it probably needs a spring cleaning and some lubrication. Again, because no one really ever takes a brand new recoil starter apart, they don't realise how much grease, lithium-based grease there is on these things when they come out of the factory. So I'm just going to deposit some grease in here, and as the spring mechanism moves backwards and forwards, it will then transfer that around the rest of the spring. So the next job is this bezel's got to go on, and can you see there's a cutout here on the centre of the spring, in this case which is here. I need to just set that in its place. So as the bezel goes on, I may need to rotate the bezel until it drops fully home. Then there was this little washer that we took off earlier that acts like a bush. So that goes on. And then the two paws. So the paws go in, so they sit flat against the and then this little weird R-shaped clip goes on. And again, it's a little knack or little fiddle to get that on. So now we've got the little clip in the middle, and you can see that as you go to pull the recoil starter, as the central white piece turns, the two little black paws move out and they will engage to the flywheel. So now it's back together, we now need to re-tension it. So we've done our checks on our cord to make sure our cord is serviceable. So now in this case I can just get hold of the cord anywhere. I'm going to use the cord as a handle. So the cord is below me, so I'm going to go clockwise, use the cord as a handle. I'm just going to go around some turns. Then I'm going to use my thumb, trap the middle bezel, take the curls out of the cord. I can hold the end of the cord and allow the drum to draw it back on. So at the moment this is an under tension cord, it hasn't taken it all away. So what I need to do to solve that is I need to withdraw a bit more cord, trap it with my thumb, get hold of the cord anywhere, add another turn or two, 1, 2, trap the middle bezel with my thumb, hold the end of the cord and allow the two component parts to come together. So it's not under tension, so it's pulling the cord away. So now I need to check to see if it's over tensioned. So I'm going to withdraw the cord. I'll turn the bezel like I would when I was starting the machine. So now I've got the knot in line with the exit. I need to make sure I've still got some movement on my spring at this point. I can get hold of the centre, turn it past. So my spring isn't over tensioned. Now I can get hold of the end of the cord and allow it to draw it back on. Now that's done and clean, I can then take the air duct, I can lay the air duct back in and just make sure it clips home. So now everything's been cleaned and the bits that go through the parts washer have been washed, then rinsed, and then dried. So now we can start rebuilding stuff. So as we start putting things back in, everything we pick up and have a look at, we want to just make sure it's serviceable. So I've got my oil pump here, and again, the oil pumps, as they rotate, this part here actually moves backwards and forwards like a little piston pump. So again, I want to put it in back into the machine, but I'm just going to give it a bit of lubrication, so don't put it back in dry. So just on the moving parts, just running a little bit of oil. Now I can just just rotate it and just move it backwards and forwards a little bit, just to work that oil through the system. So now this has got to go back on. So I've got where go onto the pipe here, where it brings the oil out of the oil tank, and then this part here is what sends the oil up to the bar and chain. And again, when we've left the saw in storage, if we have a puddle of oil under it, it's normally one of these points that's got some muck in it or has got loose. So again, when we put this back in, we need to make sure we get a good seal around those two parts. So this has got to go onto the pipe at the bottom here. So, and then I'm just going to send that home and find my 2 screws. Let's check them for torque. And again, we're winding a steel screw into an aluminium or magnesium casting, so they need to be tightened, but they don't want to be over tightened. So that's in. I then got my oil pump driver, so the nylon and then the little arm. So the little arm is important for when we put the clutch drum back on. And again, it's got a bronze bush on the inside of it, which doesn't get any lubrication. So while we put it back together, I'm just going to put a little bit of oil in there. And I can just rotate that back into the oil pump. So then we took there's this big washer that protects the oil pump driver. Then we have the clutch drum. So again, I can have a look to make sure my springs are intact, my clutch weights aren't burned or blued or got hot, so nothing needs to be replaced. So it's serviceable. Remember, I need the large side of the nut on the outside. So that's gone on. So that's, funny enough, it's gone on anti-clockwise, which is going to tighten it up. I'm just going to put my other hand on the flywheel, just hold that. I'm just going to apply a little bit of pressure. I'm just going to draw that flywheel tight. I'm not going to over tighten it, it will self tighten as the machine when I first start the machine. So before we put anything else, we now got our chain brake band that needs to go on. So again, I'll look at my chain brake band. If I can see any damage or physically see a difference in its thickness, especially between a part that's a part that engages with the clutch drum and a part that doesn't. So again, this part that runs around the clutch drum, or the parts that fit into the machine that will never actually touch the clutch drum when it's engaged. If I can see a difference in its thickness, then I need to replace it if it's scored or burnt or got hot, or in some cases they just snap. So I need to take this end and go up onto that fork. Now I need to fold this round, and it just follows the flywheel. So, and this other end's got to go back. I'm just checking to make sure it's seated correctly around that clutch, and then there's a stud that held it in the bottom. So that's the chain brake band back in place. So now it's in its small position. So now I need to pull the front handguard back to reactivate the chain brake back to its large position to be able to get the clutch drum on. So I've got a set of needle bearings there. I've got to go on to the end of the crank. So there's no way of lubricating the wheels, no way these bearings are lubricated other than if you lubricate them. And once the machine's together, unlike with the Husqvarna where you have an oil gallery, with on our Stihl we don't. So it's a set of metal nickel coated roller bearings inside a plastic housing. So if you don't lubricate them, it will degrade that plastic housing, and then your clutch drum will be running off centre against the end of the crank, and the end of the crank will then get misshapen. So again, I'm just going to apply some lift and base grease to the bearing, liberally in this case. The bearing can then slide back onto the end of the crank. So my clutch drum, I've got a little notch cut out here on the clutch drum. That little notch has to fit over the oil pump driver that we just reinstalled. So I need to have a look around the saw, and I can see in my case that my oil pump driver happens to be sitting here. On the clutch drum, where the notch is cut out to fit over the oil pump driver, there is a little tab that shows you where it is. So now it's a case of just lining the two up, setting it on the bearing, and just set it over the oil pump driver. So next it goes on is my sprocket. So let's have a look at my sprocket. So this manufacturer would recommend that you run 2 chains round a sprocket. So once I've used 2 chains up, then I need to replace those chains obviously and replace the sprocket. So rim sprocket, and my rim sprocket is going to go on, in this case righting to the outside. Then the washer acts to protect the C-clip so it doesn't get pinged off. And now my little C-clip, again, manufacturer would recommend that these get changed regularly. So position the E-clip up back onto the end of the crank. In this case I've got a Stihl combi spanner. It's got a different shaped end. I'm going to set that against the E-clip and this end against the stud, and I'm just going to push away at this end and set the E-clip on. So next is this black plastic cover that covers our chain brake trip mechanism. So that just pushes back in and removes the 3 studs we took out. 1, 2, 3. So we've rebuilt our recoil starter, cleaned out around the fan and the coil. So again, this is going to go back on. I need to just move the end of the front handguard to the side, and that will come back. So in this case, the pores inside fit inside the flywheel, so there's no problem like we have with the Husqvarna of making it sit down flat. So 4 studs. Again, the top one has this small collar on it that goes into the front handguard. Then the other 3 are the same. So again, we're just going to get them started. I can put them down in a cross pattern. Let me just check the torque. Click, click. So now we're going to clean the air filter. So we've left the air filter on when we cleaned round the saw, so we've got rid of most of the debris from around the air filter. So one job I'm going to do is put the choke on. So I'm going to open the throttle. In the case of a Stihl, I have to have the throttle open to put the choke on. And then with my thumb, I can then move the choke mechanism or the lever all the way down, hold it down with my thumb, release the throttle, and then I can release the lever. What the choke has done is it's closed a butterfly off in the carburetor, which is below the air filter. So should any debris fall down into the hole created, we'll at least have an opportunity to be able to tip it out rather than it fall further into the carburetor. So now, what I'm going to do is tip the saw upside down, so I'm going to use gravity. Now I can unscrew the air filter, and then if there's any more debris around it, it's not going to fall in the machine, it will fall out. I can have a quick look. If need be, I can take a soft brush, just remove anything before I tip the saw back over. So now I've got my air filter. So again, I might need to clean this if I'm in the woods working in its dry, hot conditions. And I might just be able to take it off, give it a tap the worst of the material out. Probably next level up from that, I can take a soft brush and I can just agitate and just brush some of the loose material out. Or I may have a low pressure airline that I could then blow from the inside out and remove some of the debris. Or the best thing I could do is take some air filter cleaner, give it a bit of a squirt of air filter cleaner, and then use a soft brush and agitate that air filter cleaner. And then I can give it a rinse, and we can let that dry naturally before we put it back on the machine. If I didn't have air filter cleaner, I could just use some warm water and some detergent, and then the warm water will allow the mesh within the air filter to expand, and the detergent will attract away all the oil and grease. So let that dry and then we can reinstall it. So next we're going to remove our spark plug. So with these Stihls, sometimes it can be quite tricky to remove the plug cap. Again, you just need to persevere with it. If you are too rough or you pull too hard, you can pull the plug cap off the HT lead, and it can be quite awkward to put it back together. So once I've withdrew the plug cap, so now I'm left with the spark plug. So now I need the appropriate tool. I need to go through this rubber seal and then onto the spark plug, and then lefty loosey. I should be able to withdraw the plug. And again, if there's any debris behind this rubber seal, then that will fall into, or could fall into the cylinder head as I move the plug. So I'm going to just use gravity by just turning the saw onto its side or over, so I can withdraw the plug. So any material that may be there will fall away rather than falling in the cylinder head. So spark plug, so it consists of a positive electrode that runs through the middle of the plug. We've got ceramic insulator here, and then there's another section of ceramic in here, and there's a positive electrode pin that comes out here, and then the outside, this part that comes round and then goes onto these threads, and then the body of the plug is the negative. So when we send electricity through the coil, from the coil up the HT lead through the plug cap to the spark plug, we run electrical current through the plug, and then at the end here there's a gap, and a spark, or a naked spark caused by electricity, jumps between the positive and the negative, and that's what ignites our fuel. Maintenance and checks. So I can check the condition of the plug, so make sure none of the ceramic is cracked or broken. I can check the security of the top of the plug, so this piece here unwinds and winds back on again depending on your plug cap. So in our case that needs to be tight. Then the colour of the plug here at this end. So generally on a 2-stroke engine we would take our spark plug out, or when we take our spark plug out, the colour here will give us an indication of how well the machine is running. So if I take my plug out and it's black and wet, we would class that as the machine running rich. So if a machine is running rich, it's got more fuel than it can combust. If it has more fuel than it can combust, that may well be a blocked air filter. It could be incorrect carburetor settings on an older machine, or a number of other things. If I take my plug out and look at the end here and it is white or very light colour, we call that running lean. If it was running lean, we've got more air than we've got fuel. So it could be a blocked fuel filter, or air filter with a hole in it, or poor carburetor settings, again on an older machine, and other things. When inspecting the end of the spark plug on the positive and negative electrode, again if the plug is run, if this machine is run very hot or very lean, the electrode could start to be worn away. That would give us an ineffective spark. Generally, if we take spark plugs out, we normally take them out, and nowadays we'd replace them. The problem with removing spark plugs, putting them back in, is the compression washer. So here's a small compression washer. It's a crush washer, and it forms a seal between the spark plug and the cylinder head. So the spark plug is made of steel, the cylinder head is made of aluminium or magnesium, and the expansion rate between the two component parts, between the spark plug and the cylinder head, will expand at different rates, and this compression washer is designed to take that expansion rate up. The more we crush it by applying the spark plug, taking it out, putting it back in again, the more we change that compression washer. So generally speaking, if we suspect we've got a problem with the spark plug, 9 times out of 10 we're going to remove it and replace it with a new one. One bit of maintenance I can do is I can clean the end. So I take a brass wire brush and I can just buff the end up, take any deposits off. Remove any deposits, and then the last thing I need to do before I can replace it is check the plug gap. And that can be done with a set of feeler gauges like this. So in here, or again with our Husqvarna. This is a Husqvarna carburetor screwdriver, and the end of the screwdriver happens to be what the plug gap is, which is 0.5mm or half a mil. So if it was too loose, then I could tap the end down, or if it's too tight, I could slightly open the end up. So plug back in, I've got to go through the rubber seal. I'm just going to seat it in with my fingers. and take the appropriate tool. Now I've got to poke the tool back through the rubber seal onto the plug, and I just now need to nip the plug. So not too tight, but winding the steel thread of the plug into the aluminium or magnesium head, cylinder head. So nip the plug, then withdraw the tool out of the seal, plug cap, and then make sure I can feel it clip back on. And then there's a little gaiter here that needs to fill the hole in around the seal. And once my air filter's dried, that can go back on. I can turn it, screw that back on, and then my top cover can go on. And again, that needs to just sit down, make sure it's sealed on both sides. And then I've got my 1, 2, 3 catches. They just need to be located and just have a quarter of a turn. So we're going to check the fuel filter. So I'm going to undo the fuel cap and take the appropriate tool. So this fuel filter is a strainer. It has a mesh. I can't really do anything about maintaining it other than remove it, discard it and replace it with a new one. Most manufacturers would recommend that would be a once a year change on an annual service, or as and when. So if we had problems with the saw fuel going through the saw, we might change the fuel filter. If I could see debris in it, at the moment this looks very clean, but you may be able to see black or speckled debris in it. But it's perfectly serviceable, so we can just let it go back into the tank. As we continue to rebuild the saw, there's certain parts that we've put back on, and there's certain parts that we haven't touched. So one of our tasks on a rebuild would be to check all external nuts, bolts and screws. So just go around the machine, anywhere where it's attached, just give everything a little bit of a nip down. These machines vibrate a lot, so things become loose. So if we don't tighten them, they will just fall apart. So I'm just checking everything I can get to that I haven't already had a screwdriver or Torx drive on. So I'm just checking through. Then the other one would be to just look to see about all my vibration mounts. So in this case, some of them are metal springs and some of them are just rubber or foam bushes. And again, I can just look to see the security of them, or in some cases, I will be able to check a screw or tighten a bush up. So we're now going to refit the bar and chain. So normal, whatever way we had the bar on, we're going to put it back on the other way up to even the wear out. I'm just going to lay the bar on. I pick my chain up. So the sharp bits point forward. And take my chain. I'm going to lay it onto my sprocket. And I'm going to lay it into the top of the bar. Now at this point the chain won't quite go on, so I'm going to get hold of the bar, move the bar off the chain adjuster pin, which is down here. Just move it back towards the sprocket. Gives me a little bit more movement, so I can just put it back onto the nose. Now I'm going to move the bar forward again onto the chain adjuster pin. So at this stage with the Stihl, I've now got the bar set on the chain adjuster pin and up on the shoulders of these two studs. I'm going to take my flat of my screwdriver I'm just going to turn the chain adjuster just to move the bar forward. So at this point we're not putting any tension in, but we just want to watch the chain move back into the bar. So now we can inspect to make sure that it's all on. I can just gently rotate the chain. I can check that it's gone into the bar and is on the sprocket properly. Take my side cover. So I can just rotate my two nuts. I want to tighten those up, not super tight, just nip them down with my fingers. I can take the flat end of my combi spanner. I can then go into my chain adjuster through the side of the side plate. I just need to turn this until I watch the tip of the bar move up. With these small bars, it's very easy to watch the tip of the bar move up. Once the tip of the bar has moved up, I'm getting close to where my chain tension should be. Now I can just move the chain around, see what it feels like, see what it sounds like. If I'm happy with that, if I'm not, I can readjust either forward or backward. If I'm happy with that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tip the rear of the saw up, put the bar on the bench, just so I can maintain the bar being in that upward position, and I can just nip the side next time. So I can just recheck the chain tension. Saw's ready for use.